each time I saw people fall, struggle, change, and
Yeah.
it's gonna change the world. It always does. Every time it changes the world and changes something.
No, I was just like, he's going. Just hit record. Let's get this. This is good.
Yeah.
Um, no, I mean, let's talk about all those things because they are affecting the world of business and
Yep.
life and the ability to do components of that or deal with components or even be in business, looking forward as the CEOs of the ship to kind of be a visionary forward for where the things are moving, and obviously to keep us out of the icebergs.
Yep.
Where are some of those? You talked about some. Let's start with some of the things we're challenging. It's challenging you right now. Things you see challenging in the world and business and marketing, and then we'll dig into all that and pull some pros
Yeah.
out
I
towards the
mean,
end and make people feel good.
yeah. I mean, if I'm starting at the top level, obviously, we are all worried as entrepreneurs because we all sit in the future and live in the future, but at the same time, we also have to live in the 1 minute ahead of us, right? Like I think one of the
Yeah.
biggest challenges of entrepreneurs and why we're crazy in our own way is that we live in this weird dynamic of like we see 5 minutes ahead of us and then we see
Yeah.
2 years ahead of us or 3 years. And I
Yes.
think for
Yes.
us, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about where is the world heading with this. Now, look, recession's recession. I don't even think that's as big of a deal. We needed a little bit of a correction almost, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, I'm not as worried about that as much, but I'm more worried about just where the world is heading. I mean, essentially, right? Like we still got war going on, more pending war, supply chain issues. There's going to be famine issues because of lack of supplies. I'm not sure if you're experiencing it, but waiting 6 months, a year for things because things are just way behind and everything that we've gotten used to over the years of being able to have plentiful and bountiful resources and things are obviously being affected right now. And and it's interesting because we see it at the business level as well too. Like
Yeah.
when we're talking about business, the moment Ukraine war happened and all these people started putting sanctions on Russia and everything, well, we saw companies that we're servicing get hurt pretty quickly
Yeah.
because their business was affected. Though it could have been just as simple as they were selling there, but they also have employees there. They also had product made there. They also had, they had different logistics that were happening because, well, it's a kind of a big country. So,
It's kind of a big
we
country.
saw, yeah, and we saw these things happening pretty quickly. And I think that it's kind of stabilized a little bit as far as like watching the businesses kind of figure it out. But it's definitely kind of creating like a rolling pin effect across the world, essentially, especially the small businesses. Unfortunately, these times of the world are when you see small businesses get affected the most just because they were not the most stable to begin with in most cases. And,
Mm.
I think it's really interesting because we see both sides. We see e-commerce companies, and then we also see like digital content creators, affiliate marketers. We've got a little variety of them, though we're not focused there. We still have them, and we continue to service them. And those guys are really getting affected, and it's very clear and evident why. And, it starts with just changes. I think the
Yeah.
biggest thing that I would say is that the world is changing, especially when it comes to email and just communication and marketing and relationship building. And, the world people are changing ultimately, right? Like, as the younger generation gets older and their spending habits increase, like those people are making that effective change occur in the world and people are kind of reacting to it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot.
That's a lot. Well, no, and I don't disagree because obviously have talked before, and you and I have known each other for a while. But the end of this is to deal with the inner complexities of how to balance what you're doing in business with world events that may or may not affect you, but you're trying to avoid those or trying to create opportunities in those. As we build businesses and companies, and you do the same, of course, as we're talking here. We're trying to navigate that not just for ourselves and our families, but for the people around us,
Yep.
which gets to be a little bit more challenging, doesn't it?
Yep, absolutely. I think that it's just, learning, watching. I mean, the weirdest thing is, I'm sure you experienced this too. Like, we have friends, business friends that are just struggling or trying to figure it out and they're trying to adapt or not adapt, I guess.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, these downturns are also when businesses fail too. I mean, we're going to see a lot of
No,
failure. I
no
remember
doubt.
last time, right? I've lived through 3 recessions myself now, right? 2000, 2008 now, and this one. And each time I saw people fall, struggle, change, and
Yeah.
it's going to change the world. It always does. Every time it changes the world and changes something major in the movement of the way that we think about things. And I don't think this one's any different.
Well, it changes the word, right?
Yep.
Change, adaptability, other words. I'll have to go back to the thesaurus just to look up the differences in your ability to, find your relevance, change it, or adapt it to market conditions. That's where true entrepreneurials will see their way through this, just like they did in 2000, 2008, etc. I was involved in those too. On different levels. I mean, the 99 hype of we're all gonna, all the computers in the world are gonna shut down, and I was a computer tech going out and trying to help them update software patches like extremely fast, so the entire operations of these companies wouldn't shut down. And then it was a nothing burger. Like, I think we like to hype a lot in America, maybe in the culture of things that feel
Drama.
bad, and so we
It's
have social
drama,
media
man.
as a megaphone to
Yeah.
turn it into something 10 times larger than it is. And I personally feel like that's some of the things that are happening right now.
Mhm.
That there's a giant megaphone of conversation and topic that's creating fear. But we've seen a lot of fear created in the last 3 years, haven't we, my friend?
Oh yeah.
And of levels of palpable nature across all kinds of things, and the obvious of healthcare, but that's also had rippling ramifications across industries. Obviously, as it went out across shipping and commerce and all kinds of things that rippled out of it, right? But it turns out it's not showing itself to be quite as one thing as opposed to another. But I see that sort of thing happening now. I mean, you have a first level view, and for folks who are not aware, let's get into who you are just real quick,
Yeah.
because your viewpoint that you're speaking from as relevance because you see it firsthand based in the business you're running, especially on the email side and communication side. So,
Yeah, I'll
um,
give you the high level 60-second blurb about myself, and get the audiences caught up in. But yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for quite some time. Currently today, I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Sendlane. We're an email and SMS marketing automation platform for e-commerce. Now, before that, I think what's interesting is I also owned a retail store that became an e-commerce store, and then I had another business that was a content creator, affiliate marketing software company as well too. So I've seen it all a little bit. I mean, if I go all the way back 10 years ago, I was truly an affiliate marketer. That's what I would look at myself as. And I started evolving into more of a content creator as I realized nurturing and relationships were really important, and also just felt more meaningful than being an affiliate marketer. And,
yeah,
I think I saw that evolution, and Sendlane started out of need and necessity from those companies, ironically, because we couldn't find platforms that understood what we were doing as marketers, and understanding that, money, just because you didn't have a brand didn't mean that you couldn't make money using an email list ultimately. So that's kind of how it all
yeah,
started for me. And, as we've adapted into the world, over the last couple of years, especially with Sendlane's continuous kind of movement into the world, has been really focusing on the e-commerce sector, just kind of using my background and what we learned and understood. And we see that as a very interesting world. And, if we're talking about the business level things, it's a much more stable world for us as well too. So, one of the things that
yeah,
people always ask is, why did we make a little pivot a couple of years ago, and why are we focused more on e-commerce? And the reality is, it's very simple, and it's kind of hard hitting, and it's kind of, but content affiliate marketers, content creators, they don't have their shit together a lot of times, and they're really unpredictable when it comes to business. Up and down and
mm,
up and down, close
mm,
tomorrow, open the next week. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
unfortunately, trying to build a business on top of that is really, really hard, and it's unstable looking. So we made that conscious decision because we realized that wouldn't be our go forward. I'm going to build $100 million company on people who can't, wake up tomorrow and decide they don't want to do their business anymore. It's very unstable.
yeah.
Where you take a brand or a company like an e-commerce company or a retail D2C brand, they often have a vision and a future and a want and desire as well too. So it's kind of where Sendlane's at, and that's who I am as a person. So I come with a lot of background. Obviously, I've already been talking about email a little bit, but that's really where my expertise really lies. I also, do paid media, CRO, and other things as well. But email marketing is where I really live, breathe, and dream. And I love it. It's my favorite channel. I don't care what people say, because it really, truly does drive revenue at the end of the day. And
It
it
really
keeps,
does, man.
yeah.
There's a chart out earlier that said that in the communication types that send the most amount of conversions to Amazon, which is a channel we focus on, email was number one,
Mhm.
with a very distant other channel mechanisms of social media. So email is still the major component of buying, tribal building, communications, and relationship driven
Correct.
communications. It was one of the first, and it's sort of still one of the top. Yeah, there's a lot of fun with TikTok and all this other stuff that's going on out here, but to create true relationship driven communication, email and email sequences and communication driven, like newsletters and content newsletters that are focused on your product, benefit, or driven service, really make a huge difference. I have
Yeah.
like a 55 day sequence that's followed every lead that comes into my business and curates and communicates and explains and gives them plenty of time to trust and know and like what we're doing.
Yeah.
And e-commerce is a huge component of that for the other side of the house. People are like, we can't do e-commerce on Amazon and do email. That's actually not true. No. And email in Amazon is a huge component of building up an asset base, obviously, to do that in e-com and Shopify. Of course, we know. For the people who don't understand this, I will say something I'm sure you know very well. E-com makes the profit in an e-commerce business, especially on Shopify. If you can do your paid acquisition and your traffic and lead gen on the front end, you still have to monetize them through email, right? And even SMS, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, some more too. In your e-commerce store, that's where your profit's at. That's your back end, isn't it?
Yep. Correct. That's exactly how money's made. I mean, that's it, right? Amazon's not making you the money per se. It's getting your brand out there. It's making you some money, but you don't have as much fees. And ultimately, your loyal customers will end up on your e-commerce site and order directly from you as well, too. So that's where you should
They'll
go.
give you any opportunity to communicate, right? Yep. And obviously, we know Amazon is not necessarily the partner, and I never tell anybody we're partnered with Amazon. Amazon's a system. It has its purpose. It sells to the customer. Can I give a customer, get a customer relationship, get emails from them voluntarily within the terms of service? Absolutely. But you need to build up those additional channels to create a holistic multi-channel marketing.
Yep.
If you're really going to truly build a brand. And like you said, those who, my experience, and I'm just going to echo what you said a minute ago, are building e-commerce brands are typically those who have stable growth, consistent growth, long-term growth in their business.
Yep.
Unlike my experience with affiliate marketing as well, which is when you get something running, it gets swept up underneath you and taken away all of a sudden, and now you're shifting gears to another offer. You're never actually owning, building, or creating any intrinsic value in your business or your marketing, right?
Yeah, and you're a hero today and dead tomorrow, meaning like it's every day you are fighting the battle. You know what I mean? Like a good business is one that can run without you, right? And I don't think in an affiliate marketing world, most often it's not like that. Unfortunately, it's sad, but you know it requires that heavy hand. And we see businesses all the time where the owner or founder will step away and say, "Oh, I've got a team to do it." Never works out. We've literally seen it over and over again, that playbook, right? So I think it's interesting, but yeah, I agree. I think that Amazon obviously is where all the buyers are. I buy from Amazon all the time, and I find brands all the time through it because, I don't jump on Amazon for anything more than to buy something. You don't go to browse, you go to buy.
I call it the add to cart of the world, right? People need to understand Amazon is just the add to cart. Boop.
Yeah, it's the most buyer intent driven platform when you think about it, more than anything else. You don't search on there for no other reason, and but you don't build relationships on that for either, right? And you've got to find that, right? There's all these large companies, retail is now shutting down, and people are looking for their brands and trying to find that connection out there. And again, get their email address, get in front of them, and
there are ways to do that on the Amazon side. Yeah, absolutely. There's ways to do it on the Amazon in compliance. We can get between 20 to 40% of Amazon's customers to come into our ecosystem voluntarily within the terms of service.
Yeah.
And start building that relationship and sending them back around to additional products. And Amazon's really great about sending additional products. But like you said, building that list is a huge component of opening the additional channels once you build a brand. So it's just scalability and growth is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And obviously that list is worth something. So if you want intrinsic value in the list, the business, in the future salability of it, you need that email communications, direct mailing lists.
Absolutely.
So valuable. So compare me in your mind, email to SMS and where it's been, where it's at, and kind of what you see about the differences, pros and cons.
Yeah, we've been deep in the SMS world now and really just trying to learn and understand how people are doing. Well, here's what we've really come down to, and what I've learned at. Two things. One, people are just at a different level of communication. Like back in the day, I would say even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when you sent an email, you knew that people were checking their email pretty actively, looking at it. Well, the younger generation doesn't do that anymore. They have thousands of unread emails. They use an email almost like what we use our post office box for, meaning like we use it off as like we'll check that in 5 to 7 days. It's the same thing that's happening in email. And what SMS has enabled, and I think it's really interesting, is what SMS enabled two things. One, obviously people who prefer to get those communications on that channel. But two, I think that we've changed. SMS has helped, and why, even at Sendlane, why we merged them together and why we believe in the merge together is that it's become a channel that becomes a addition to your email. Ultimately, it becomes a conversational channel. It becomes a lot to a person. It becomes how they have the connection, right? And SMS is more intimate, and they'll have that connection, but also is a way to alert. I mean, we see brands that are doing just simple things, as simple as like, hey, I just sent an email about our latest thing, our latest sale that we're having. And that's all they're doing, right? And it might be just as simple as that, or as deep as making their sales and running their newsletters and all the things that they do. But even as simple as just getting people to remind and understand to look for that email is just as powerful. So that's the positives of it. I think there's a lot of positives. Now, the negatives are very much the cost basis of it. It's not so cheap compared to email, and people are always shocked by that. But that just means that your marketing needs to be tight. It just means that you've got to be optimized. It just means that you've got to know how to spend it. And just like paid media or spending advertising anywhere, man, like if you don't have everything else tight in your scenario, adding SMS is not going to help your business ultimately. It's going to hurt you because there's a heavy cost to it, substantial over what an email is. So we see both sides of it happening. I think the adoption is still going to take some time. It's going to be all about the people. And ultimately, the question is SMS right for your business is always a question that we get asked. And it's, to me, it's all about understanding if your audience, right, cares, right? Who's your buyer, right? If you got 65-year-old buyers and they're buying hearing aids from you, chances are they don't give a crap about your SMS. Right? You know what I mean? And they barely check your email anyways, right? But SMS, man, But if you got a really young, hot brand and you're selling clothing to 18-year-olds, well, chances are all they want is SMS from you. But they don't want SMS. They want to be able to converse and talk to you and have conversations. That's really all it is. In my opinion, it's the future support. I know Apple's already betting on it, right? Where they're building these Apple retail integrations. If you have the Apple card yourself, you can talk to them via text. It's like, to me, at least as someone who is busy and also enjoys technology, like that is so much better than dealing with customer service and calling on the phone, right?
Yeah, the customer experience, right? Yeah. Which gets into, I mean, you're touching on some very critical points here to draw out and make sure we're clear on. Don't just sell people. Communicate with them, find value, get them to trust, know, trust, and like you.
Yeah.
And then they will want to buy something from you because people want to buy, they don't want to be sold.
Correct.
And there's such a mistake I see with these marketers constantly as they're inboxing me. Number one, don't add my email to your list just because we had a conversation. That's one drives me insane, right?
Correct.
The other one is don't just blast, sales emails for 30 days straight and say, well, that's just my metric. No, that's
well, there's two types of ones, right? There's the ones that over email, and then there's the ones that under email because they don't want to bother their people, right? And they'll send one email a month and it'll be just the sale. Again, no relationship building, just the email sale, right? And I'm like, well, why would I want to buy from you? Okay. And I think about this all the time. When I buy from a brand, a lot of times I buy not only for the need and necessity, the price does make a difference, but a lot of times it's because I like the brand, I like what it is. When you start doing what you just said and you email every day or email once a month, all you're doing is buying people who are impulsive or want the discount, right? That's not the reason why people should be buying from you. If your people are buying from you because they got a discount or a reason is the price is so low right now, it's not really building a loyal customer, but it is building revenue. So positive, negative there. But yeah, man, like to touch on that, I think that is the core of why we're seeing a lot of the marketers out there struggle right now is they want to copy and paste. They don't want to do the hard work. They want to do the playbook they've been running for the last 5 years. Well, that playbook's changed, everyone. Like the playbook.
It's desperate greed, man.
Yeah,
it is. And if we go back to the recession conversation, the businesses that continued through, the ones that didn't shut down because of the liabilities that they had created, were the ones that had established customer relationships that sustained through any kind of maybe client loss. During that time frame, they didn't lose all their clients. They may have not lost their biggest client, which shut down their business to which degree, or their e-com business didn't get shut down because their product wasn't really needed in the marketplace, and they were able to sustain and go through that. So opportunities are there. Let's kind of close out this with some opportunities too. Yeah. What do you see on your perspective as opportunities right now that people should be considering as they're listening to this?
The first thing I would say is that like the audience wants to create a connection with you. And I believe that one of the bigger opportunities out there are to start really understanding your data and the people on your list ultimately, either as simple as asking them exactly what they want to learn from you, or using the data that you have. I mean, if you're a store owner and you've got an e-commerce store, for example, you got 100 points of data on a person easily. And if you got that much data, you can start segmenting your audience down by something. It doesn't matter if it's by money, it's by visits, it's by, the type of products they've purchased, but really understanding your audience. I think for the first time, in my opinion, more and more people are understanding that data and analytics and understanding how to utilize that is something that's becoming new to people. I always look at, like, for example, we're talking about e-commerce right now, and I look at e-commerce still so much in the infancy of where the world is right now, right? E-commerce in the last 10 years, it's pretty new, man. Like, it's a pretty new kind of cycle, and everyone's still trying to figure it out.
Amazon's literally just desktop, laptop, etc. traffic just got surpassed by mobile.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, things are just now taking adoption.
Yeah, it's
right?
still so small in infancy of the world, and I think that the second part to that, you've already kind of nailed it, is you got to start building relationships. It's no longer just about the sale, man. People want to have a connection. I always say the Gen X, not Gen X, the millennials and the Gen Y and the younger group, they want to buy with you. They don't want to buy. They don't want to get sold to the same way that they had. They want to have a relationship. They want to feel like they're doing something. It's why mission-driven companies or purpose-driven companies are so powerful right now, is because they want to latch on and say, I'm not only spending $50 on this t-shirt, but I'm also building a tree or planting, getting some more water or something else. You know what I mean? Like, that mission-driven focus is really important. So I think that's important. I also think that building a brand, I know that that's always something that marketers hate to hear, but building a brand is kind of important right now, because brand is building loyalty right now, and branding and being able to be recognizable is how people remember you ultimately, and want to be remembered, and what's that called, and tell their friends about it as well too. So there's a lot of this stuff that it all comes into the one thing, is where, like, how do you make sure you effectively continue to grow through and thrive through this whole recession, essentially? Because I'm sure Neil, like, some of the greatest businesses in the world strive through recessions because they're doing the things right, while the other and your competition is falling apart because they refuse to change, pivot, or adapt. And that's why those companies success. Not because they're just the smartest people, they're well-funded, or any of that stuff. It's really just the smartest people who can pivot fast enough, adapt and change and grow out, while the other ones play my 5-year-old playbook and continue to fail. And then eventually go get yourself a job at somewhere. And nothing wrong with that, dude. But you're not an entrepreneur if you can't pivot enough. You know what I mean?
Nokia was an example of that. Did you see their board meeting just this last week?
No, I don't even want to know. How bad was it?
The whole board, Nokia they built the most indestructible, incredible phone ever. And it's an internet legend, right? Mm-hmm. And their board got up and basically they just got sold. And so in this press conference, the board literally broke down crying because they realized what they'd lost. I'm like, what is happening here? Like, these people knew that they did not change, adapt, and pivot. And so Nokia will most likely become the brand of our generation that no one ever knows about, with some of the best technology that was ever developed, the strongest, most resilient technology in the marketplace for cell phones and media. And you're not going to hear about them in another 5 years. They'll be gone.
It's extremely sad. I mean, extremely sad because you and I both grew up on Nokia phones, and
yep, that was my first phone.
Yeah, we all had the first Nokia phone, and I think they paved the way. But they always say this is the same thing as, like, the whole, like, someone comes and sets the foundation, and then the startups or the new companies or the new innovation comes in and takes over once this company changes. It's literally what happens in the startup world. I mean, that's what we're doing, right? We're chasing the big guys, and we're chasing what
we figured out as being innovators.
Yeah, we're
not
displacing.
Inventors.
Yeah, you're displacing.
I went down the invention path, and it got terrible. I spent $100,000 on a patent with people that didn't end up working out, and whoa, that was a trip. Once I figured out the difference between real innovation and invention, that's when so many things change. So if you're an e-com or business and you have opportunities to innovate, like you said, pivot and change in the marketplace ahead of what is coming, which is, a change. Like you said, a recession is kind of a negative word, and even they locked the Wikipedia yesterday and won't let anybody change it after the final edit of, we're not in a recession was left on the Wikipedia page. Like, these people are morons. So at the end of the day, we have a change coming, a correction, a market right size, and we know things have been inflated. We know America is way up on its debt, way up on its inflation, way up on a whole lot of things. And what we see as right sizing in America in this conversation, and I'm sure you agree with me, Jimmy, is very different than where the rest of the world is. Even our right size even our 50% decline is 150% greater than most other countries in the world.
Yeah.
So what we consider to be a down, a change, a turn, a timeline for things that should be shipped, and versus when we got in 1 week, we now have to wait 6 weeks for. It's like, oh my gosh, all hell breaks loose, right? But it's like, what are you talking about, man? That's almost normalized. We have been so abundant,
We're spoiled.
and I see spoiled, and I see so many scarcity mindsets listening, coming on, and emailing me at times with their scarcity, and this is bad, and you're a scam, and this is crap, and all this other nonsense. And at the end of it, that scarcity does not see just how freaking abundant we actually are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we see that. And I was actually talking to someone yesterday. I was at an event yesterday. We were talking about it. And one of the things that I said I was really worried about the future was not the fact that all this recession, all this stuff, right? None of this, right? I'm actually worried because the people that we have that represent the future of this world, man, they're not very strong, man. They're worried about the wrong things. They're not driven. They're not hungry. They're not innovative. They're not going to go change the world because they want to do it. They're more worried about how many social media likes they're getting, or how their friends are liking their stuff, or what
power
the trend
grabs
is.
right? Grabbing control. Yes,
it's wild, right?
That's the most interesting thing. We're gonna have to come back and unpack that. Would you come back for a session 2? And let's dig
absolutely.
into that.
We could talk about that all day, because I see a total different world versus what the hustle that we had in our generation. We were hungry.
Dude,
we wanted to go grow and be something. And unfortunately, not saying all of them, I'm not saying that I'm generalizing, but the majority of people in their younger generation right now, they're in it for just to survive and have memories. And unfortunately, that doesn't survive and have memories for the world. Unfortunately, it does not help the United States become something and continue to become the greatest country in the world, right? So that's what I was telling someone. I was like, that's why we downfall eventually, is not because of shortages or this and that, because we're very plentiful and bountiful. It's the fact that we don't have the people who want it anymore.
It's the weak mindsets. Yes. No doubt.
Yeah.
Jim, thank you so much for coming on, brother. Well, let's get to session 2, and we'll keep unpacking that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to jump on and keep talking about that.